Today's broken engine teardown is going to be short and sweet, and I really hope it's worth it because I finally got my hands on a Mazda Skyactiv engine. Turns out these are very hard cores to find, and it's almost like these engines don't fail. Obviously, all engines fail for one reason or another, but all of the bad Skyactiv engines that I've been able to find are bad because they were smashed in an accident. They've got bosses ripped off, pans ripped off, intakes broken. That's interesting enough, but we want to see internal damage caused by engine design or neglect, abuse. That's the interesting stuff, and that's what I'm hoping is the deal here. This is a 2.5 liter Skyactiv-G out of a 2021 Mazda CX30 with just 30,000 miles on it. Seems really premature for a catastrophic engine failure, but that is apparently what happened here. I'm not so sure it shows that well on the channel, but I'm kind of a Mazda guy. Not as much as my brother, but I've had a lot of Mazdas in my life because my dad is a retired Mazda master tech. So as I started to get into cars and buy cars and fix cars, I've had all kinds of cool Mazdas. I've had a 323 GTX. I've had several 626 turbos, MX-6 GTs, second generation cars with the KLV6, lots of Mazda B-Series trucks, a ton of Miatas, first and second generation RX-7s as well, even Turbo 2 cars. Many of those I wish I still had. I know Mazda likes to try a lot of weird stuff. That's just Mazda's thing. And the Millennia S is proof of that. Very much so. In fact, I've had several of those cars. Love them dearly. And sometimes it works out really well, and that seems to be the case with the Skyactiv engines, because these engines are not normal engines. These engines are centered around complete combustion. The way the pistons look and are shaped, the way the exhaust manifold that is not here looks, it's all designed for maximum combustion. So as we take this engine apart, we're going to see some things that look a little different than your average engine does. Now, I do have the repair order from this particular, well, I have a copy of it anyway, from this engine, and I will read what it says. It says, customer states that they tried to... Sounds like, okay, that's cool. Well, if it failed externally, we would know that. They usually fail from the inside out. I'm just nitpicking here, but I'm curious to see what is actually wrong with this engine. I haven't torn it over. I don't even know, it may still have oil in it. So let's do the normal checks and let's start ripping this thing apart. Well, you guys know the way this works. The very first thing we're going to do is remove the spark plugs and see what we see. Uh-oh. Socket launched the pin out of it, and it probably went in the engine. So we're going to find a piece of metal in there. Well, as we would expect, these are the original spark plugs, and they don't look too bad. This one's a little wet, cylinder 4, but nothing's bent or smashed. Nothing to see yet. Well, the next step is to turn this thing over. I'm not sure if it rotates. I'm sure it's fine. I don't feel anything loose. Well, that's interesting. All right, I actually got to take this apart. I can't just keep playing around. I don't know if it's supposed to do that, but it's doing it. Neat. Well, let's take a look down the intake ports. Little carbony for 30,000 miles. Ooh, rust. A little bit of moisture in there. That one looks all right. Ooh, more rust. Well, that's not a good sign. And looking in the exhaust ports, that looks pretty normal. That one's wet. Maybe some moisture in there. That one's also wet. And that one looks pretty normal. Now, this engine has not sat outside. Just would like to put that out there. This came from inside a dealership. Now it's time to peel the valve cover off. Did I miss one? Yep. So this looks pretty good in here. I don't see any rockers out of place. I don't see any carnage or debris anywhere. I do like these oiling rails that drop oil on top of every single lobe. That I'm sure prolongs rocker life and camshaft life. But yeah, I don't really see anything too terrible. I mean, this looks like a 30,000 mile engine. And even the chain, the guides, all that stuff looks really good. Now, I'm not really familiar with the timing system of these engines, so I'm going to turn this engine over until where I think it makes sense. Maybe we can verify it's in time. Now we're going to look at timing. So I've turned this engine over to where I think cylinder 1 is at TDC based on the little white dot on the center of the harmonic balancer along the scale here, and I'm used to reading Mazda scales here. So I think somewhere around 6-7 degrees is TDC, and I've also decided to get my long quarter drive extension and put it through the spark plug hole on number 1, and at top dead center is literally the highest part. So we're going to turn this over to where it's at its highest, which is right there. Now we can look at the timing marks on the cam gears, and you can see that mark is lined up with the surface of the cylinder head, and that mark right there is lined up. There's also a mark right here with the arrow. It doesn't point straight up. It's supposed to point a little that direction. And then when you go to the intake cam, that mark is pretty parallel to the surface of the cylinder head, and the pin is almost straight up. So this engine is in time. There is our white dot. Indicates where TDC is. Let's peel off the timing cover, but first we need to remove the crank pulley. Ooh, oil. Now, later, now. Now this is what I really like to see. The Mazda engines before the Sky-Activ came out were very heavily Ford influenced, and they did not have keyed cranks. Even Mazda calls having keyed cranks a drastic improvement over this engine's predecessor. Now we're going to peel off this timing cover. There's a whole bunch of 10mm bolts. The previous generation of engines were all 8s. 10s are better. Ooh, that one didn't need to come out.
Back in you go.
Oh, these are still 8s. Ah. Now we should be able to easily remove this timing cover. Does that need to come out? Did we determine that doesn't need to come out? Did I glaringly leave this out? Oh wait, we took this out and it didn't need to come out. I can hear that. Does that need to come out? There's no way that needs to come out. We're gonna find out. Nope. Okay, see? I'm just being sure. I don't want to break it. Timing cover is off. Looks brand new in here. It's brand new. You know, after last week's hot fudge molasses tar pit of a VR30, this is what I want to see. It's all clean and shiny and new. This is great. I don't see anything broken in here. Yeah, this looks fantastic. The next thing we're going to do is remove the timing chain tensioner, and I don't know where my safety tote went. I'm very sad. I think it's gone forever. So normally you're supposed to just put a pin in here, right there, and it locks this in. But I don't have a pin, and I'm not going to retime this engine. So we're just going to take the bolts out and hope it doesn't shoot me in the face. Oh no, it did leak a bunch of oil though. Yeah, that was fine. Now we can peel off this timing chain. I think this piece just slides off. That rail looks fantastic. Gotcha. Now we'll get this other rail off. Yeah. It's got a little RTV on it. That's not supposed to be there. Outside of that, it's like a brand new part. Nope. Now we can remove this chain. What a chain. It's a piece of art. The next thing I'm going to do is remove the high pressure fuel pump housing. It's this right here. Well, that was simple. Everything looks good in there. Now, before we cram these caps loose, we're going to remove these oiling lines. They look pretty simple. And while I'm in the neighborhood, I'm going to remove this chain guide. And I don't know, I think I can leave I leave this in there? Yes, I can leave that in there. Next, let's crack these cams off. I'm not sure I mentioned this yet, but this is out of a rental car. I don't know if that has any bearing on what we're going to find. And no, I'm not foreshadowing. Nope. Now, I've had a lot of questions about this hammer. This is actually a hammer that one of my viewers and friends, Andy Campbell, him and his son made this for me to do this. It's crazy. Thanks again. I know it's been a while since I said thank you, but thank you again. Well, everything looks pretty good in here. All the rockers are in good shape. All the cam journals look perfect. I don't see any more signs of damage. This looks like a 30,000 mile engine. I don't see what's wrong yet. The cam caps look good. Camshafts look good. This all looks really nice. But with 30K, how bad could it be? I shouldn't ask questions like that. Now, I've learned a thing or two since I've had this channel, and one of those things I've learned is never trust that engines are drained. So we're going to pull the drain plug out, tilt the engine over, and get all of the oil out of it, whatever's left. Whoa, it's actually drained. But is it really? Ah, see? Ooh, that doesn't look like great oil. Yeah, that doesn't have the correct consistency. I mean, that new oil they're running in these cars is pretty close to water, but I don't think it's supposed to look like it. Maybe that's just normal. Or maybe the lighter colored water looking thing in the rest of this oil drain pan is... Yeah, that's not good. Now I'm going to rotate the engine over on its side so I can get the head bolts out a little bit easier. And if you'll notice, I removed the rockers. I did that so they don't go flying off when I turn the engine on its side. Ooh, that doesn't look good. So that remark was because of this. That doesn't look good. Now it's time to crack these head bolts loose, and for those that are wondering, nothing's really changed. These are still T55s. That one took a little less force. Stubborn. See if this just pops right off. Come on now. Well, there's the part of my tool. I think it's going to drop lifters for a while. Are you done? Oh, that's not good looking. That's bad looking. So here is the cylinder head with the head gasket still on it. And you can definitely see there was a little bit of coolant escaping in this area. Let's peel this off. See if we can figure out why. I can't figure out why. I mean, the head gasket isn't clearly blown. Maybe breached. There's some rust here around the valves. The rest of this doesn't really look too bad. I don't see anything glaring. So here is what the pistons look like. And yes, they look really different, almost diesel-ish, because this cup, this whole piston design is designed for high compression and to avoid knock, essentially. These are 14-to-1 compression, and this is a crazy piston design compared to most engines. But that's what doesn't look so good. In fact, I would say that looks bad. That's a good word to describe it. Bad. Ooh, even worse on that side. Look at the amount of wear. What has happened here? I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to turn this engine over to where 2 and 3 are at TDC and 1 and 4 are at the bottom of the bores, and we'll look at the other 2 bores. Oh, that's... Yep. Well, cylinder 4 looks pretty good, and keep in mind, this is closest to where that external coolant leak would have been. And that doesn't look... It really doesn't look too bad. There's a little bit of wear there. But then we get to cylinder 1, quite a bit of rust, water, and moisture. It's not good. It's not good at all. Now we're going to turn this over so we can remove the oil pan. Hopefully not make a mess in the process. It wouldn't do that to me. Well, that was nice and easy. Now it's time to remove a bunch of these 8mm headed bolts and pull the pan. That is something else I like to see. An oil level sensor. These engines also do have a dipstick. It just wasn't present with this engine. I bet I'll need blue for this, so... Ooh, that looks like some expressionist art right there. It's not oil. Oh, it's not all oil. So this is what's in the pan. And I'm no rocket surgeon, but oil and water do mix, and that's kind of what it looks like has happened here. So now this strange contraption that's on the bottom of this bed plate is an oil pump, and this is the balance cartridge. It's a 2.5 liter 4-cylinder, and I suppose it would vibrate without this. Now, in earlier engines, with the more Ford design engines, they did have a balance cartridge in the bottom here, but it had gear mesh with a gear on the actual crankshaft itself. This is driven off of a chain. I don't really see issues with either one, and I really don't think I'm going to be taking this apart, because this may have some value. Again, it's a pretty new engine, so I don't know where the market is on this stuff. But you can see here's the balance shafts here. Once we get it apart, we'll spin it a little bit, and maybe the other side has a better window into what's going on. And the inside of the pickup looks pretty clean too. The next thing we're going to do is remove the tensioner for this chain. We'll remove that guide, get the chain off, go from there. Sure, this is just, yeah, it's not under a lot of tension. I don't know why I do these things. Now, can I get this chain off without taking anything else off? It doesn't appear that I can. I was really hoping to. Wait. Yeah, no. So the next thing I'm going to do is unbolt the oil pump. Looks like there's 3 10mm bolts, and I should be able to angle it off, take the tension out of that chain. Well, that worked well. Now, I don't plan on taking this oil pump apart. Again, don't know where the value is. Can't imagine this being very expensive new or worth it used, but I'm still not taking it apart because I don't suspect there's any damage inside of this pump. Now for this balance cartridge. I think there's only 4 more bolts. They are sadly 13mm. That's kind of fun to play with. It's got oil in you. Do you have oil? Yes, you have oil. Here's what the balance shaft or balance cartridge looks like. It's pretty neat. I don't see any problems with it. Something else that's different about the Sky-Activ engines over its predecessor is these have a bed plate. It's a 2-piece block, top and bottom, whereas its predecessor had a 1-piece block and a removable main cap girdle. So normally I'd pull the rods and pistons out first, and I could do that, but I think it's going to be a lot easier to remove the bed plate, and then I'll get all the rods and pistons out at once. So the first thing I'm going to do is remove the 10mm, and then we'll do the main cap bolts. Now, I don't know if there's a good place to pry on here. Most manufacturers leave you with something. There's kind of something here. Oh, and there's a place right here. It's surrounded with sealant. I'll use my engine stand then. I don't care. Well, I'll just get it off that way. Oh, that was a big mess. Yes, coolant is not supposed to come out of this part of the block. Now this all looks pretty good. Let's get this rear main seal out of the way. I don't feel anything loose. Everything looks normal. I'm going to unbolt all the rod caps. We'll lift the crank out, push the rods and pistons through. And is that it? Is that really it? Are we there? I think we're there. Okay, at this point, the crankshaft should just boop right out of there. Boop, right out of there. Okay, now we got to get the rods and pistons out. Now this should be pretty easy. I can't believe I caught that. That just fell out of there. That one too. Well, that's not good. And it's filled with Milky Way. Well, to start out, the lower main bearing shells are perfect. They are like they've only got 30,000 miles on them. The crankshaft is perfect too. Despite apparently having oil and water mixed, this has no damage. None at all. The rod bearings are also perfect. Exactly what you'd expect out of a 30,000 mile engine. Now here's cylinder 1. Cylinder 1 and 2 came out pretty nice, like you'd expect, although there's a little bit of wear, some very acute damage on that skirt. I think that's from the rust. Piston looks good. Cylinder 2, similar spot there from rust. Piston also looks just fine. But then we got to cylinders 3 and 4. and these literally fell out of the engine. And I did spray them off a little, but then I stopped because I wanted to show you how gunked up these were. Now that is not normal, and what I think that is that's a mixture of coolant and carbon, and it has completely got those rings stuck in the ringland, and that's why these practically fell out. Now, I don't see any damage to the piston per se. Well, a little bit more wear on that coating. Cylinder 4, a lot more carbon on that one. And look at the way those rings are they're stuck. But nothing's bent, no bent rods. I don't think this was a hydrolock event. Everything went to top dead center. Let's go look at that cylinder head again. I looked this over extensively. I can't find any cracks. The only thing that I can denote from as this thing came apart is that this head bolt, this one right here, was about half as tight as the rest of them. Now, I don't know if that's because this thing overheated and it lost its tension, or it lost its tension and it caused it to overheat. But either way, this is looking like an overheat situation, and then it started consuming coolant somehow. I still haven't found how coolant got into the combustion chamber unless it was just through a breach between head gasket layers, or maybe the head and the gasket, or the gasket and the block. Without tension, it's really hard to say. And the upper cells, in equally good condition. There's really nothing awry, nothing bad to see here. This all looks good. Let's flip this over and look at those bores. So looking this over pretty closely, this is the area of concern here. I don't see anything. I don't see anything like a crack. Although that is pretty damaged right there. Is that from detonation, you think? I don't know if that's the case. It looks like it's a similar spot in that cylinder, and that cylinder to a lesser degree. So maybe this thing's running a little lean? Maybe this thing got hot and the bore's distorted? I think this is a classic overheat. I just don't see what caused it. But this block's going to need some work to be usable. I don't know if it's got any value. These engines are very plentiful. Lots of rust in cylinder 1. I feel like we're missing part of the story. I can't tell you how this happened. I can tell you that the engine was definitely bad and it wasn't some sort of misdiagnosis. And we all know that everyone who drives a rental car treats it like it's their own car. That's not true at all. People that drive rental cars generally drive them a lot harder than they would their own car. And they also don't always tell the truth about what happened when something happened. Of course, I don't have the full story. I don't have even the entire engine. I just had a bare engine. That's how it comes from Mazda. This engine received a brand new engine. But this was still a pretty cool engine to tear down. Not a lot of damage, but it was neat to see some of its design features. And it's the first time I've torn one down, and I don't dislike it. I think it's a pretty good engine. Plus, I haven't really seen too many bad ones, which tells me that overall the Sky-Activ engines are pretty good. If you'd like to buy any parts out of this engine or anything else I've torn down or off of this 2013 Mustang GT 6-speed 70,000 mile car, you can go to importapart.com, or you can email us at importapartsales@gmail.com. Just let us know what you're looking for. We also have a part request form on our website. Really hope you enjoyed this teardown as always. I love all the feedback, all the comments, even the criticism. I love it all, and I'll catch you on the next one. Oil control valve. Well, someone's in a good mood.